Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Superheroes, Movies, and Superhero Movies. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm John Pelzel.
I'm Jake Stew.
And today we're talking about Watchmen, released in 2009, directed by Zack Snyder, written by David Hayter and Alex Say, and starring Billy Crudup, Patrick Wilson, Jackie Earle Haley, Malin Ackerman, Carla Gugino, Matthew Good, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, and that's primarily the main cast. I don't think I'm forgetting anybody there. Like I said, this was released in 2009, and this was, correct me if I'm wrong, but this was Zack Snyder's follow-up to 300, wasn't it?
Yes. 300 was 2007. This was 09.
Yeah. And I was very impressed with 300. And I had not read the Watchmen comic before this. Well, I read it before the movie came out, but I had not read it until that first
the trailer,
the teaser trailer came out. And I went, "Holy crap! I got to read this book."
Same.
I did the same thing.
Yeah.
You did
probably,
too, Stu?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm guessing that had a big impact on a lot of people.
I actually read on IMDb's trivia today that after the teaser trailer came out, the Watchmen graphic novel ended up back on the bestsellers list, and like bookstores were selling out of it and stuff, which I'm not surprised by, because that's exactly what we did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that being said, I wasn't a Watchmen diehard fan before the movie came out. I had read the comic once after seeing the teaser trailer. Because the teaser trailer just blew me away. The usage of that Smashing Pumpkins song and the visuals, it just looked incredible, and I needed to know what was going on in that movie or in that story. And so read the graphic novel, loved it, and then March of 2009 went and saw this movie in the theater. I think I saw it in the IMAX, actually. I remember standing in line, having to wait to get in. We got there hours early to make sure to get a good seat, and saw it, I guess, opening day. It came out, it had a great release date, by the way. It was 03/06/09.
3 days
which I think
before
was
my birthday.
Oh, wow.
I've just noticed that Zack Snyder has a lot of movies that come out in March.
Maybe that's his lucky month or something.
300
It is the month of St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, BVS came out in March, right?
BVS came out in March. The Snyder Cut came out in March.
Yeah, you're right.
March has been kind.
Man of Steel came out in June, though. I remember that. But did you guys see this in the theater?
Yes.
Yeah.
Stupid question, I guess. What was your initial thought?
So like you said, I read the graphic novel beforehand, went and got it. Loved it, right? I couldn't wait to see this. And then you had the changes, very minor, really. My initial thought was, aside from, I guess I'll go into, should I go into the difference of the graphic novel and the movie?
Well, we can jump right into it if you want. Yeah, I feel like the biggest difference is towards the end, but we can talk about that.
Yeah,
we can start off with that. That's fine with me.
Yeah, they change what the threat is.
Right.
From a giant like creature that's created and to a nuclear threat. Mm-hmm. Or actually it's Dr. Manhattan.
Yeah.
So here's what's interesting. I think this is the second time I've seen this movie.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I didn't remember, it was kind of going in fresh. I remembered a little bit, but the one thing I did remember is that, to address your question, what was my initial thoughts? I loved this movie. I own the Ultimate Cut, which I hadn't watched since I bought it, but I literally bought it just so I could own it. And I remember thinking that I wish they had stayed completely true and kept the giant creature at the time that this movie was made. I'm assuming that there were definitely technology limitations at the time that would have probably kept that. Or they were like, how accepted is this going to be to a mainstream audience? Because this literally came out right after like Iron Man.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Like there were Iron Man when Iron Man came out, there were not a lot of superhero movies still. So we were still kind of fresh in this whole superhero movie thing. And Watchmen, watching it again this time, was so beyond, and ahead of its time.
I agree.
The thing I really remember thinking in the theater was that this movie was almost like frame for frame remake of the graphic novel, and I was blown away. I just loved this movie.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. It was definitely above its time. I was working at the movie theater at the time that this movie came out, and I obviously I saw it day one. And yeah, like you said, it was way ahead of its time. I've always said that had this movie come out maybe a few years later, it might have been a little bit more well received among general audiences. But I loved it. I loved how epic it was. It just this big grand story that was so well adapted. Like you said, it was frame for frame, like almost panel for panel. The same visuals, and it worked. Because a lot of people were saying before this movie came out that like even before this movie was announced, that the movie was unfilmable, and Zack Snyder said, "Hold my beer," and this incredible superhero movie. And watching it this time, I got a lot of Justice League vibes. So I could tell, like, if he kind of like never got the chance to make the Justice League movie that he wanted to make, that would have been, he kind of thought that probably would have been his chance to make his Justice League movie. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I loved every minute of it, and I too owned the Ultimate Edition, and I watched that. I watched half of it yesterday, and I watched the other half today. Yeah, so I loved it. I even loved the end. I think the end in the movie is better than the end in the graphic novel.
Yeah, I agree with both of you guys. I loved every second of it as well. I think he basically used the graphic novel as like storyboards. It seemed like, it was, he probably had the graphic novel open on set going, okay, this is the next shot here and blah, blah, blah. And,
yep.
I mean, I think he did the best job adapting this story that anybody possibly could have. I think you're right, John. I think the year it came out, like if Watchmen came out today, I think maybe general audiences would have been more accepting of having a squid monster be the thing that attacks New York. Agreed. I had to remember, because I haven't read the book in a while, and so I reread the end of the graphic novel today because I couldn't remember how the giant squid killed a bunch of people. And basically what it was Ozymandias figured out how to teleport things because he, since John knew how to teleport, since Dr. Manhattan knew how to teleport, he was like, I know it's possible. So he worked on figuring out how to teleport things, but everything he teleported died or exploded. And so what he did was he created this monster, teleported it exploded, but he used like the brain of a human psychic to send out like a psychic shockwave that killed half of New York City. And so it's very convoluted. I totally understand. I mean, it's cool, but I feel like it would have been, general audiences today might have been able to more accept it, but back in 2009, I think a lot of people would have gone, what?
Yeah, it
would have just felt so, yeah. And I think using and also in the graphic novel, it's only New York City. And his whole plan was he wanted the world to think that they were being invaded by like aliens. And that's what stopped the whole nuclear war possibility. In the movie, he blows up several cities across the world. Right. And I thought that was also kind of smart. I did notice too, I wrote it down, when it shows after Ozymandias says, I did it 35 minutes ago, and it shows the screens. God. On the little screen it says squid energizing. So it's like S.Q. It's like it stands for something, and I want to know what squid stands for. But I like that was Zack Snyder's little like it's still a squid. Like you kind of put that in there. But no, I think for the longest time I agreed with you that I think the movie ending was actually better than the book ending. I thought it just made so much more sense to have it be a Dr. Manhattan thing and the world go, oh, whoa, 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 kind of about that and bring peace about that way. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of this movie. I too own the ultimate cut. However, I unfortunately own it on DVD. It's one of my big regrets. I wish I had bought it on Blu-ray.
I have it
but
on 4K,
I have the director's cut on
looks
Blu-ray, and I
amazing.
have the theatrical cut on DVD as well.
Yeah, I got it on 4K.
Did you watch?
You have the ultimate cut on 4K? Oh man, I need to get it on 4K.
It looks fantastic. Oh my goodness, it
Sure
looks
it does.
fantastic. One of my favorite shots is not even like a big action shot. It's one of the it's in the beginning of the movie, and you see the newspaper like flying in front of Rorschach. That shot, I don't know what it is about that shot, but it looks so good. It's so clear, and it's so, the movement is so smooth. It's one of the best things in 4K I've ever seen.
Oh wow, I'll definitely be picking that up.
Did you watch the ultimate cut, Justin?
No, I just watched the director's cut, which as far as I know, is basically the same as the ultimate cut. It just doesn't have the animated sequences of which
Black
in the
Freighter.
book was a comic book, but yeah,
It's still a comic book, and
right.
in
It is a
this.
comic, yeah, and and they don't have. I do because I've started watching the ultimate cut in the past. And I think they focus on that kid reading the comic a little bit more in the ultimate cut. They don't show that as much in the director's cut because there's no real reason for it.
Right.
If they're not going to cut away to the animated stuff. You see him reading it a couple times in the movie. And actually, I haven't seen the theatrical version in so long. The only scene that I can remember that was added for the director's cut is when Hollis Mason gets beat up and murdered by the top knot.
Yeah, I was going to say I there was a lot. So like I said, this is the second time I've seen it. I saw it in the theater, and then this is the ultimate cut, and I definitely didn't remember the Hollis Mason,
right?
Murder scene.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, but one thing I was thinking watching the ultimate cut was I couldn't really decipher which scenes were added.
Right.
It just flows really well.
Yeah.
So that's something that I love, because a lot of times director's cuts or whatever, when they add in the extra stuff, you can kind of tell
there's definitely been director's cuts or extended cuts of movies where you're like, okay, I know why they cut this out. Like there's a reason they cut this out. But I don't feel that way with this movie. I think the director's cut or even the ultimate cut of the movie is like the definitive version of Watchmen. Yeah. I think it happens to Zack Snyder too often. I think he makes this great movie and the studio goes, it's too long, man. You got to cut it down. And he's like, yeah, but it's perfect. And they go, I don't care. It's too long.
Yeah.
And so I remember when Watchmen came out, it was like 2 hours and 40 something minutes. So he only added back in like 20 something minutes, but for the director's cut, the ultimate cut's longer because of the animated sequences. But he did the same thing happened with Batman vs Superman. He had to put out a 2.5 hour version movie, and then the 3 hour arguably better version of the movie is
I don't think it's
on the director's cut.
I think a lot
well,
of
it's not
people
yeah,
agree
it's
with you.
Maybe I meant to say obviously, not arguably.
Yeah.
But and then obviously, the same thing happened with Justice League. Well, something terrible happened with Justice League. But yeah, I wish they would just let Zack Snyder put out the movie he wants to put out, because it's clearly
there is a director's cut of Sucker Punch that is not as good as not as good as the theatrical version. I see why they cut things out. There's a lot of unnecessary singing in that movie.
Interesting.
Because the girls work at a brothel and they like put on performances.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's a lot of unnecessary stuff in that they definitely cut out. That I was glad they cut out, because I don't like that director's cut.
Gotcha. I have not seen that. I own it on Blu-ray, but I haven't watched it yet.
It's not very good, but it's enjoyable.
Right. I haven't seen his animated movie, The Legends of Ga'Hoole or whatever, or the Legends Owls of Ga'Hoole, Legends of the Guardians or something. I can't remember what it's called, but
yeah.
So not having seen that one, Sucker Punch is probably my least favorite Zack Snyder film. I don't hate it by any means, but I remember it felt kind of like watching a friend play a video game, where it was just like one boss fight after another, and you're kind of
Mhm.
like, all right, I'm gonna go home now.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it wasn't. It's visually amazing, but the story didn't really do a whole lot for me with that movie. But Watchmen, on the other hand, knocked my socks off.
Agreed.
I'll tell you what, man. When seeing it in the theater and watching it even today, I can't help but like I knew the movie was going to be good when I saw it in the theater when those opening credits start.
Mhm.
Those opening credits are some of the best opening credits I think I've, just in any movie ever.
And that's something I was kind of wishing that I had gone back and read the graphic novel again,
Mm-hmm.
because I knew what was going on in the stuff, but
Yeah.
at the same time I was thinking, man, if people hadn't read the graphic novel, they're gonna really not be grasping a lot of what's going on during
Right.
this.
Yeah.
So I would definitely recommend people read the graphic novel before you see this movie, because it doesn't take anything away. A lot of times when you read a book before you see the movie, it makes the movie not as good.
Right.
But this being literally, like we were saying, a panel by panel version of the comic, it almost just makes you enjoy it more.
Absolutely.
And we started to talk about this, and I think I kind of got off on a tangent, but the diehard Watchmen fans, because this graphic novel came out, I think, in the 80s, and so
Mhm.
Yes.
the people who had known this comic and loved it for 20 years, I can understand why they were disappointed by the end, because they wanted to see the giant squid thing on the big screen, and then it got changed. So I can understand some of the dislike for the ending change. However, I don't really understand how somebody who's a fan of the graphic novel can think that it's a bad adaptation, which I have
Right.
seen online before. I've seen people say like Zack Snyder completely missed the point of the graphic novel, and I don't
I think
really
even
feel like
Alan Moore
that's
said
true.
that, didn't he?
Well, Alan Moore is just a big grump, I think. He's a genius,
Yeah.
but he has hated pretty much every adaptation of his stuff ever, and he refuses to let people put his name on the movies. So if you notice, like, I forgot to mention that in the opening, this movie was written by David Hayter and Alex Say, but it was based on a graphic novel by Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons. But if you watch the movie, it doesn't say based on a graphic novel by Alan Moore. It says based on a graphic novel illustrated by Dave Gibbons. Alan Moore's name is not in the credits of the movie. And that's because Alan Moore does not want his name in the credits of the movies based on his graphic novels. And I can understand that for certain things. Like he, I believe, wrote A League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, and I don't know if you saw that
Right.
movie. It was not
I
that
have not
great.
seen
It was not good. No.
And I have not read the graphic novel for From Hell, but I think From Hell was the movie that he was like, that was kind of the last straw, because his name is on that movie, but his name is not on V for Vendetta. He wrote that, right?
Yeah.
And or Watchmen, and it's not on the Watchmen. So HBO did a Watchmen TV show last year or 2 years ago, and his name's not on that either.
Which I've not seen, and now watching this, I'm like, oh, I've got to dive into that.
You really need to watch. Did you watch it, Stu?
I watched the first episode and I liked it. I haven't finished it yet.
You guys both definitely need to watch the HBO show. It is a sequel to the comic book, not the movie. So, you can still, I mean, you could kind of view it as a sequel to the movie, but the ending, they view the squid thing as actually having happened, not the Dr. Manhattan thing having happened. But it is really, really good. And I remember thinking like a sequel to Watchmen. I don't know about that, but I loved it. I thought it was one of the best TV shows I had pretty much ever seen. And it's only a 1-season thing. It's more of a mini series than a TV show. So you guys definitely should watch it.
Didn't they had a comic though as well that came out, right?
DC,
is it not based off
unrelated. No, it's not based
Okay.
off that. There was DC has done a couple things with Watchmen over the years. There was a before Watchmen comic, and then there was another comic that actually brought in characters from like Batman and Rorschach or something like, it was like, or maybe not Rorschach because Rorschach dies, but
that was Doomsday Clock.
Yeah, that's what it was. I wanted to read it, but I feel like I read somewhere that it wasn't very good. But
it's okay. It's a bit underwhelming because they you think that they're gonna build up to this face off between Superman and Dr. Manhattan, and that's not what happens. I mean, it makes sense because Dr. Manhattan is so OP, but it's still a bit underwhelming.
Gotcha.
See, I personally don't like the idea of them merging the two universes.
No, I
think
don't either.
that-
Yeah.
yeah.
And in fact, in the movie, and I don't think this is not something that was in the novel at all, but in the movie, in the opening credits, there's a shot. It's one of the very first shots, and I think it's Night Owl punching out like a mugger,
Mm-hmm.
and in the background, it's like this wealthy couple with their kid, and it's supposed to be the Waynes.
Yeah.
And that's Bruce Wayne. And so then Night Owl came in, saved the day. That's why Batman doesn't exist, because the Waynes never got murdered. And the reason why it's supposed to be that is because in the background there's also a Batman poster now. How is there a Batman poster if Batman never existed? But I think I think that was Snyder's way of just saying, like, look, these are the Waynes. See the Batman poster? These are the Waynes. Which I think is kind of cool.
Yeah, I was gonna say, actually, that's interesting because it's obviously an alternate, reality that we're living in. Nixon gets elected for a third term.
Right.
Yeah.
There's something else that was a big change.
Was it the Cold War or was it Vietnam? No, we won the Vietnam War.
Yeah, that was a big.
That's
that
what it was.
Yeah.
Yes.
Rather than losing the Vietnam War, we had Dr. Manhattan on
War.
our side. Yeah.
Right. You also have the comedian assassinating JFK.
Right. Yep.
Huh?
I was just saying, I like that. I just thought,
Yeah,
I
I
remember
do
seeing
too.
that in the theater, and the camera turns or pans, and you see the comedian packing up his rifle, and I was like, oh, that's funny. Or maybe not funny, but it's,
Right.
It was an interesting change.
It's creative.
Yes.
creative. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the cast, because my next note is about Billy Crudup.
Yes.
And I wrote Billy Crudup is perfect as Dr. Manhattan.
I think
I think the casting is honestly, everybody's perfect. I think
they really
Jackie
are.
Earl Haley as Rorschach is incredible.
Amazing.
Patrick Wilson as Night Owl is amazing. Malin Ackerman as Silk Spectre is incredible. And then Matthew Good as Ozymandias, I think, is really underrated as well.
Very underrated.
Yeah.
I remember when the movie came out, people complained that his accent goes in and out, but it was completely on purpose. I read an interview with Matthew Good where he said when he's like Adrian Veidt in front of the public, he tried to have like this American accent, but when he's in private, his kind of Eastern European kind of accent comes out a little bit more
Interesting.
or something. And so it was a persona thing that he was kind of putting on, pretending to be.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I thought it's a lot of thought going into the character, I thought. And it's one of my favorite aspects of it.
No, absolutely. My favorite character was actually, I have two favorite characters. Dr. Manhattan, because, I mean, he's Dr. Manhattan. He's so cool. He can do everything. But his analysis of humanity was very, very interesting. As the movie progresses, he gets increasingly detached from humanity because he sees everything so objectively. It's kind of hard for him to have any compassion.
Right.
And then on the other side of that was the comedian, because they're like two sides of the same coin. And that's explained very well in the scene where the comedian kills that chick that he got pregnant.
Right.
And
In Vietnam.
Yeah, in Vietnam. And Dr. Manhattan was like, dude, you shot her. He was like, yeah, you could have stopped me, but you didn't. Like you're going out of touch. But the comedian, he's already out of touch. That's why his name is the comedian, because he sees everything so objectively that it's almost a flaw, because he has no compassion.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a big narcissist. He's a psychopath.
He really is. Yeah.
He is.
Yeah.
Also perfectly casted. Jeffrey Dean Morgan as the
Absolutely.
comedian was incredible. And they all really look like their comic counterpart too. Like they just did a fantastic job. Yeah.
This was the
they
first
really
movie
did.
that I
Exactly.
saw. This was the first movie that I saw Patrick Wilson in. I'd never seen him in anything before this.
I
Is
saw
that
Phantom
why
of the
this was
Opera.
inspired? Was because of Aquaman?
We're just doing
No,
Patrick.
about that.
No,
The
it
podcast
wasn't.
is now the Patrick Wilson podcast, and we're just going to do nothing but Patrick Wilson movies from now on.
that was a coincidence, but yeah, I love Patrick Wilson. He's become one of my favorite actors.
I thought maybe when you were editing this, Justin, and I mentioned that I was trying to figure out where I recognized Patrick Wilson from, and I was like, it's Phantom of the Opera. And then you were like, Watchmen.
Well, it's actually funny when I edited Aquaman, and you were like, I know Patrick Wilson from. The first thing that popped in my head was Phantom of the Opera, and you said Phantom of the Opera, and I said, yep, I knew it. But I thought about that when I popped in Watchmen today. I was like, if you had asked me, I would have said, yeah, Patrick Wilson's in Watchmen, but I kind of wasn't thinking about it. And so when he popped up on screen, I was like, oh yeah, he's Night Owl,
So I saw Watchmen too when I was like scrolling,
Mhm.
and I was like, okay. I was like, he played Night Owl. Okay, I do remember that. But then when I got down to Phantom of the Opera, I was like, oh, that's where I know him from.
That's the first movie I saw him in, but I'm trying to think he was also in a movie called Hard Candy with Elliot Page. And I saw that, I think, before I saw Watchmen. So I think I kind of had started to become a fan of his before Watchmen kind of came out. But this movie, I think, solidified. I think I was thinking, like, this guy's a good actor. Oh, I had also seen Little Children before this, too. And he was in that.
He was also the voice of the president in BVS.
He was.
In what?
Batman vs. Superman. He was the voice of the president on the phone.
I gotcha.
Carla, I don't know. I don't know if it's. I think it's Carla Gugino is how you say her name. But anyway, she also works with Zack Snyder. She was the voice of Keelix in Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman.
Mm-hmm.
It just goes to show. I feel like Zack Snyder, like people who work with Zack Snyder, continually want to work with Zack Snyder, which I think is so cool. I just feel like he's probably a nice dude.
Yeah, everyone that works with him says he's like the nicest person ever. So it makes sense why people want to collaborate with him several times.
Where was Gerard Butler in this? Who is he?
He's the voice of the pirate in the animated series or in the animated sequences.
Okay, because I saw his name and I was like, oh, 300. I was like, yeah, because I was thinking the same thing. I was like, he's using Gerard Butler right after.
Yeah.
Because like we were saying, this was the movie after 300. And
right. Jackie Earle Haley as Rorschach. Rorschach, I don't want to say I mean, he's a psychopath too, but his character is so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
He's kind of like he's basically Batman if Batman went off the deep end, kind of.
Yeah.
But also, and I think it works a little better in the comic than it does in the movie because we know who Jackie Earle Haley is. But I like how even the Watchmen don't know who Rorschach actually is, and he is just walking around with that "end is nigh" sign, and nobody knows that that's Rorschach and everything. I think that's great. It's one of my, I love that aspect of the novel, and I loved because in the novel it works so much better because you just see this guy and you're like, oh, okay, whatever, weird guy, and then when you find out later that that's Rorschach, you're like, oh, and it's fun to go back and look and be like, he was in all of these scenes, like in the background and stuff. It's so cool.
Yeah, I was actually watching this with Luke, and he picked up on it, like in that scene where Rorschach is narrating and says, I wasn't wearing my mask and they didn't recognize me. And it passes over him, but it's a silhouette of his back.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you don't see his face, but Luke was like, wait, is Rorschach the guy with the sign? So like he knew even
he
then.
Picked up on
like,
it. Wow.
That's awesome. That's
pretty good.
Awesome.
So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and he actually he actually views his mask as his actual face, and then his actual face is his mask. Yeah, like dude is nuts. He's crazy.
Right. So when the police take it off when they capture him, he's like freaking
my face,
out.
My face!
Give me back my face!
Yeah. Where's Jackie Earle Haley been lately? I was trying to think of like the last movie I saw him in, and I couldn't think of anything.
They tried to do him in
Nightmare on Elm Street.
The Nightmare, on Elm Street.
That's right.
And
He was
I think
Freddy Krueger.
The reaction of that kind of maybe dampened his ability to get.
Yeah. That's a bummer.
And that's unfortunate because he wasn't necessarily bad in that movie. That movie's terrible, by the way.
But not because of him.
Yeah, it wasn't because of him.
Right.
It was just terrible in every other way.
Right. Right.
I've
don't
always
really
thought-
love his version of Freddy Krueger, but it's not. But like you said, it's not. I mean, that movie's just as bad all around.
Yeah.
But his Freddy Krueger's not terrible. It's just
Yeah.
not. It's just not. It's not Robert Englund.
Yeah. He's a good part of a really bad movie.
Right.
Yeah. I kind of always thought he'd be a good Wolverine.
Oh, interesting.
I could see that. He has the height, the comic book accurate height.
He's got the height.
Right.
He also has the intensity. He would just
Yeah,
need
he's
to
got
put
the
on
gruff-
some. He'd need to put on some muscle. He'd need to be a little
Right.
bulkier. But
Right.
but yeah, he could be a good Wolverine. I love the voice he does for Rorschach. There is some test footage. Apparently, one of the writer David Hayter. There's test footage from 2003 that was leaked online years later, and you can still find it on YouTube. The guy that played Jorah Mormont from Game of Thrones is Dan, and Ray Stevenson, who played the Punisher in Punisher Warzone, he plays Rorschach. And it's just that scene where Dan comes home and finds Rorschach in his kitchen eating beans, and Rorschach tells him that the comedian died and somebody might be picking off mass heroes.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing wrong with the scene, it's fine, but Ray Stevenson does not now that we've seen Jackie Earle Haley's version of Rorschach and it's just perfect. Listening to Ray Stevenson, it just feels so wrong because he's just got like this lighter voice. He's like help myself to some beans.
Help myself with some beans.
Like, hope you don't mind. And you're just like, what? And it just is weird to me. But because Jackie Earle Haley just nailed it. Like it's even when you read it in the comic, it has like the dialogue bubble has like kind of a wavy line to it. So it's you're obviously meant to get kind of this gruff kind of sounding voice to it, and that's not what Ray Stevenson did at all. But Jackie Earle Haley just nailed it.
And I love the way he speaks in the movie. He speaks in kind of like a broken English, almost as if
fine like this.
Yeah, almost as if you're like taking notes, but he talks like he's taking notes.
Right.
Yeah. It almost makes it kind of like a noir kind of,
yes,
thing to it, which
that's exactly what it is.
Kind of, it's what they're going for. He's got the, the fedora, and he's the detective,
right. Yeah.
going around. Yeah. It's really fitting.
But he's absolutely out of his mind.
Right. Exactly.
To a degree. I mean, he's on to something, obviously.
No,
but
he's very intelligent, but he's very
just
crazy.
He's very crazy. I do like that he is the only one that is going to reveal Fight's plans. Like he's leaving. Like I am telling the world what you did.
You're gonna have to kill me.
And everybody is like, you can't, because they don't necessarily like Dan and Lori. They don't agree with what Veidt did, but they also know that if they told the truth, then World War III might be back on, and it's so they feel like they have to stay quiet. But Rorschach sticks to his guns, he's like, I don't care if World War III is going to happen. What you did was wrong. And it's just, I like that his character is just super interesting to me. I won't say, yeah, he's a psychopath. I don't want to say I really like his character, but it's just a really interesting character to watch and everything.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the ending because we talked about this a little bit earlier. I really think that's one of the greatest comic book endings in a movie, or one of the greatest comic book movie endings.
Right.
Because the villain wins and there's nothing that they can do about it.
Yeah.
Because even if they told, like you said, it would have started World War III. So there was nothing that they could do. And Veidt's plan worked to perfection. By the time they got there, it was already executed. I love it. I mean, I don't love it, but
that's the best part. And that's how it was in the comic too. And that's what I think is so genius. Because, we've seen, it's that trope. You see those movies where the bad guy reveals the plan to James Bond or whatever. And then James Bond saves the day and the bad guy doesn't get to do it. And you think, well, why did you waste all this time telling the plan? You should have just done the plan. And so that's, one of the best things about this movie is the bad guy is revealing his big plan. And then they're like, we can't let you do that. And he's like, I did it 35
35
minutes
Right.
minutes
ago.
ago.
Yeah, I love his line. He's like, "Do you think I'm a comic book villain?"
Right. Yeah.
Well, you almost had it. You got to be quicker than that.
Right. I also love real quick that they included the tiger, Babastis or something like that.
Yes, it's actually
Yes.
a lynx.
I know it's not. Yeah, I was gonna say I
It's
know
a
it's not a tiger,
fictional
but it's
animal.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah,
a cross
yeah.
between a lynx and a tiger. It looks amazing.
it does look
Yeah.
amazing. I was so happy that they kept that in there. I thought that was so cool.
Mhm.
And that's obviously a reference to, the Egyptian
Right.
culture,
Mhm.
which is really cool. That I just love how, that this character is created with that whole like theme, and he's got like, steps leading up to, pyramids and
Yeah.
like hieroglyphics on the wall and everything.
Yeah.
It's really cool. Ramsey the Second is his password.
Right, that's his password. Yeah. Yeah. Very, very cool. One of the notes I wrote, and I can see how this could be a detractor for some of the people who really love the comic. It did seem like they made Dan and Lori have like super strength, especially in that scene where they're fighting the criminals in that
Yes.
alley. Like they are, like she kicks somebody at one point, and they like literally fly across the alley into a
Yeah,
garbage, a dump.
Zack Snyder
dumpster.
is what
It's
that is.
very stylistic.
Yeah.
But it doesn't bother me at all. I do think, he maybe went a tiny bit overboard on that scene. But I don't, like I said, it doesn't bother me at all. And I think, I love that they're basically just destroying these guys, and they're just having so much fun doing it, essentially.
Mhm.
It's funny because I didn't take a whole lot of notes, but that's one of them. And I wrote it down before that started happening.
I didn't take a whole lot of notes either because I've seen the movie so many times. I've actually seen the ultimate cut more than I've seen the theatrical cut. I've only watched the theatrical cut once.
Gotcha.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I think I've only seen the theatrical cut once. I saw it in the theater, and then I think every time I've watched the movie since then, I've either watched the director's cut or the ultimate cut. So
As you probably should.
Right.
But yeah, like Dan goes, we shouldn't be here. It's a bad neighborhood.
I'm
And
in a
then
bad
they
mood.
immediately turn down a dark alley. And then they get surrounded by gangs, and I was like, look, see, this is what happens when you don't take good advice. But then they just are like, so
yeah, I think honestly, she says I'm in a bad mood, so it's like they were like looking for
They were
trouble
looking
almost,
for trouble. Yeah.
Yeah.
gotcha.
One of the notes I wrote says that even though it's a sad scene, I love the scene with Hollis Mason where he's getting attacked, just because every
Yeah.
time he throws a punch and it goes like, you see the old school bad guys that he was punched, like those flashbacks were just
Mhm.
so well done and everything. And I love the look of the old school heroes and the villains. Like the villains all have the masks and wear the striped shirts and all that stuff.
Mhm.
It's so stylized and comic booky. I just love it.
Yeah.
And it's
Yes.
it is a sad scene, but I'm glad that I remember
Yeah, you
that
get
one
that,
was-
I love that too with the comedian. Like
right.
when you go back to his far flashbacks, it's like that really comic booky, colorful outfit.
Like the
Yeah,
yellow
yeah.
jumpsuit.
And then they're in Vietnam, and he's got like the more modern, dark
Yeah.
suit.
Yeah, and that scene with him and Night Owl where it's the police strike and they're trying to kind of maintain order, and they throw the beer can or whatever and it hits the comedian, and he's like, all right,
Mhm.
that's how you want to do it. And Night Owl is just so shocked, he's like, what happened to us? And that whole scene is fantastic, and Jeffrey Dean Morgan is great in that,
Mhm. I
the
think
American
that's,
dream, it came true,
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's one of Jeffrey Dean Morgan's best scenes in the movie, because it completely explains the essence of his comedian persona.
Yeah.
He's a parody of what America thinks it is.
Right. Look at my notes here. Oh, he has a great line in that scene actually that says, "I haven't had this much fun since Woodward and Bernstein." And that kind of I never noticed that line before. But Woodward and Bernstein, Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein, were the two Washington Post reporters who basically took down Nixon. They're the ones who basically made the connection. They're the two guys from All the President's Men. So they're the two guys that kind of discovered the break-in at the Watergate Hotel and how that was connected to Nixon.
Mhm.
And so that makes me think that the comedian basically murdered Woodburn and Bernstein or something, and that's Nixon is still the president.
That's right.
I never
yeah.
thought of that. Wow.
So I thought that was a really great line. He's like, I haven't had this much fun since Woodburn and Bernstein. And I was like, I don't want to know what he did to Woodburn and Bernstein, but Nixon is still president, so he did something to them.
That's funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
What'd you think of who plays Nixon, by the way?
I don't know, actually. Let me look that up. He
his makeup
Robert
was great.
Wisden is his name. Yeah, it's fantastic. Maybe Wisden. I'm not sure how you say his name, but he does not look like Richard Nixon, so they do a fantastic job with the makeup. And he does a good job with the performance, too, of course.
Oh, yeah,
I thought his
he looks
performance was like the makeup to me looks a little
makeup-y.
It's noticeable to me.
Okay.
I don't think it was so much back then, but like he does a pretty good job with the performance though, so that makes up
definitely. Yeah, he looks nothing like Nixon.
No, he doesn't.
Like, not even a little bit.
It's always tough. I feel like sometimes when you have to try to make somebody look like a real person using makeup and stuff, and so I do think it always kind of looks a little off. And I agree with you.
Plasticky.
Yeah, I can see that, but it works for me. I think I think it looks great, and it works.
No, I agree.
They could have just hired an actor that kind of looked like Nixon and just done that, but I like the way
then you wouldn't have gotten the performance. Yeah, you need the performance over the appearance.
Absolutely,
right.
Absolutely. I'm looking at a still right now, and for me, it's the hair. The hair is noticeably fake. The face looks fine, but the hair is very noticeably fake.
I only wrote 2 other notes, and one of them is kind of a joke. During the scene with Dan and Lori when they're getting dinner, and they're talking. I forget what the guy's name was, but it was the guy that liked getting beat up by superheroes, and Dan was like, yeah, he tried that on me one time, and I just told him to get lost, and she's like, whatever happened to him? And he's like, tried that on Rorschach, and he got dropped down an elevator shaft. They laugh about it, and she's like, that's so not funny. But the note I wrote was, I had the closed captions on because I was watching it a little quieter since I think my son was asleep at that time. And the closed captions say that some woman in the restaurant says, I'm so glad I ordered the 4-legged chicken. And I thought that was the weirdest thing to have on the cat. Like, why caption that? Like, it was so bizarre.
I had the caption on too, and I did not get that. So
really?
that must have been on the DVD.
On the Blu-ray, yeah.
Oh, the Blu-ray.
I'm so glad I ordered the 4-legged chicken. I rewound it and I said, did I just read that? It was really weird.
That's hilarious.
Why does the chicken have 4 legs?
I wrote.
That's exactly.
I need to know that.
It's wait. Are they saying it's a dog? I think that's what the joke is.
Like a Chinese restaurant or something?
It's a dog.
That's bad.
Oh man. Wow. That's terrible.
Yeah. The last note I wrote was it made public that Edward Blake was the comedian because Dr. Manhattan attends his funeral. And now there is a photo of Edward Blake shaking hands with the president, not in the comedian costume, and so maybe there was that connection. But I just thought I've never thought about it before until I watched it this time, but I was like, nobody
they
knew.
Mention in like when they're interviewing what's his Veet.
Yeah, Adrian, yeah.
Yeah, Adrian Veet, right, that only 2 people have been revealed.
Right.
And it's
him and the older Night Owl.
Right.
Yeah. So nobody knew. Right. So nobody knew Edward Blake was a comedian. Not even the other Watchmen. Rorschach didn't know he was a comedian until he found the secret room in his apartment. So, but yet, he obviously tells people. Rorschach tells Dr. Manhattan. He tells Dan, and so they attend the funeral. And I just thought, wouldn't that attract some attention? Like, Dr. Manhattan is probably the most famous person in the world.
Yeah.
And he's attending this random guy's funeral. People are going to wonder who he, like it would just be, I don't know. I feel like maybe it had to have come out or something. And it just
maybe after his death, they were like, let's just.
Well, we found out he's a comedian and, it just was something, because I don't think it's mentioned in the book either, but I'd have to go back and read it. But yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting. I was like, that, people are going to wonder why Dr. Manhattan is attending this random guy's funeral. So I feel like they would have had to explain. Well, he was
Well,
the
plus,
comedian.
they were searching the murder scene. Rorschach opens up the secret.
That's true, and
compartment.
we never see him close it. So
Yeah.
when the cops show up, he might
I
have
would
left it open.
imagine it would have been cool though if they had maybe a quick scene where they had
Just
like a newspaper report or something that said,
Yeah.
Edward Blake.
Edward Blake was the comedian. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is oversight.
Gosh, I feel like there's still so much of the movie we haven't really talked about. We didn't talk about Malin Ackerman as Silk Spectre. I think she does a fantastic job. I think she looks like she stepped right out of the comic.
Absolutely.
I remember thinking she was one of the weaker elements when I saw it in the theater, but watching it this time, I didn't think that at all. I thought she was actually quite strong in the role.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree.
I loved her.
I don't think there's any weak element.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah.
At least not in the casting or anything. Yeah, or
Right.
yeah, I don't think. Yeah,
Yeah, I loved her. Her like conflicting dichotomy with Dr. Manhattan, because they had like two conflicting philosophies. Because he was so, like I said, he was so objective and kind of black and white, and she was the complete opposite. And then the scene where he took her to Mars, and it kind of he came to a realization that when it was revealed that the comedian was her father, he was like, how can your mother love someone who treated her like that? And he came to a realization that she was the result of she was a miracle. She was
Right.
the result of two things that didn't make sense, and he loved her, and that kind of like reignited his humanity.
Yeah.
So she was far more important than I realized when I first watched the movie.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
One thing I wrote down though about her was at the end when, is it? I've always said Ozymandias, but you say Ozymandias or Ozzy?
I pronounced it Ozymandias, but I don't know. Maybe I'm pronouncing it
Ozymandias?
wrong.
I think you're probably right. What about you, Stu?
I've always said Ozymandias, but
Ozymandias. So we
So
all
we
three
have three different pronunciations of it. Yeah. Just say however you normally say it. It's who
All right.
cares?
Well, I'm clearly missing some letters, so I'm going to say Ozymandias. When Ozymandias, reveals his plan, explains it, and Dr. Manhattan's like, oh, yeah, he's right.
Mhm.
We have to do this.
Mhm.
And at the end of the movie, you can tell while they're still in Antarctica, Night Owl and Silk Spectre are not on board with that, right?
no.
Like they're in a predicament. They realize what's done has been done.
Mm-hmm.
If they tell the world it's going to undo everything, they obviously wouldn't have gone that route.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't want to undo what has happened.
Right.
What band-aid we actually put on by doing this.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not on board. She's obviously now very upset, I would imagine, with Dr. Manhattan, because he's like, yeah, we got to do this. But she kisses him as he leaves. And I was like, so clearly she, regardless of all this, feud and whatever, she's still choosing him. But then she's with Dan at the end.
Well, yeah,
I
I think
assumed it was a goodbye kiss because I feel like Dr. Manhattan has to go basically live on Mars because the world no longer trusts him.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
Man,
I was
if I
about to
was
ask-
Dan, I would be furious. that's quite some goodbye kiss.
you're in the background like, what the crap?
We're through. We're
ask-
through.
I can't remember. I hate when this happens. John, you're very familiar with this, the Aquaman episode. I hate when I can't remember certain parts, but do they say what happens to Dr. Manhattan at the end of the movie? Do they say anything about him leaving or anything like that?
I don't remember.
Think they do.
I don't think they do, but I just assumed he just went to live on Mars.
That's what he had kind of established that he was going to leave Earth anyway and be on Mars. So
yeah, right.
That's what I
he had already detached himself from humanity, so it for him it made sense to just go live on Mars.
Right.
Ozymandias.
So you said it
Apparently
right.
how you pronounce it.
Yeah, you were saying it right, Justin.
Ozymandias.
Unless
I totally expected it to say Ozymandias, and I thought I was going to be 100% wrong, but I'm surprised by that. Anyway.
Can we start the whole episode over?
We have 5 hours of recording.
I kind of knew you were going to say that.
It's one of my favorite scenes just because I love the acting in it so much. And it's right around that same time that you guys are talking about. It's when Rorschach goes to leave the Antarctica base and Dr. Manhattan's like, I can't let you do that. Rorschach gives his speech and pulls off his mask and, he's saying, what are you waiting for? And then Dr. Manhattan just blows him up. And then I love the way Patrick Wilson, that scream he gives, like you could just, the emotion that he portrays in that is just so good. And that I just love the acting in that scene so much from all three of those guys. And then I wrote down the costume designer, because right after he does that, he rips off his goggles and he pushes his night owl mask back. And I wrote, whoever the costume designer for this movie is needs to go work for the CW shows, because John, you've never watched The Flash, but The Flash constantly has his cowl like back behind him like that. And it's so obvious that it's not the cowl that they normally use, because he'll go to flip it up, they'll cut away to somebody else, and then they cut back and he's like tugging on the actual mask he wears. And it's never looked good to me. Like you can always just tell that they're two different things. And I was like, well, he just did it perfectly in this movie. He just pushes it back and it's hanging back behind him. I was like, why can't the Flash costume people get that? But
I feel like it's easier to take off than it is to put on. So,
well, that's true too, maybe. Yeah. But we never see him take it off in the.
Would
you
love
either.
just to see the scene of the Flash like
struggling so hard?
Or we could take it back to Batman Returns, and then it like you cut and then you cut away, and then you see the
he's got
the black on the eyes
on
is gone, and he just rips off the rubber mask. He was like, I got 10 of these at home. I don't need to keep this intact.
Right. I'm a billionaire. These are just worthless.
Alfred, I've ruined another.
So you really need to stop ripping them off your face.
You need to shut up, Alfred, and get me another cowl.
He's like, do you realize I could get a raise if you stopped destroying all these?
You're a free room and board. Shut up.
I still do not have another cowl in my hands.
My favorite line of Rorschach actually is probably in the prison when he throws the oil on the guy and goes, "Yeah, you guys are I'm not locked in here with you. You're locked in here with me."
Yeah. First time I saw that line actually gave me chills.
Yes.
Again, Jackie Earle Haley is not a very tall dude, and he is so intimidating in that scene.
Very much intimidating. He's so much of a brute.
Yeah, and I love that the whole sequence with I forget the character's name, but the little person who's trying to exact his revenge on Rorschach, and Rorschach is just so not scared, and he like breaks that guy's thumbs and then kills the guy with the toilet and everything. Yeah, it's just so good.
And then
he's insane.
Yeah,
it's so good.
And then after he breaks the guy's thumbs, the thug, the little guy, he has him chop off his arms. He's like, it's nothing personal, man. You in the way.
Right.
Yeah.
Like that's cold blooded, man.
I don't think that was in the theatrical version, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't remember, but I was going to say this movie was.
But I've only seen it once, so
Right. Yeah, I'd have to go back and check it out. This movie was gorier than I remember.
Yeah,
Like I remember
yeah.
certain scenes happening, but I remember being like, "Oh, I forgot it was that like brutal." Like the scene with the flashback with Rorschach where he finds the guy that killed the little girl,
Yes.
and he's like just doing the
That's
hatchet
another
over
scene where I
her
was like,
head.
I wonder if that was in the theatrical, but I don't
think
know.
it was too because I remember. I'm pretty sure I remember seeing it, but again, I don't know. It's been so long.
Maybe it just showed, but man, that
The
flap
first one,
of
maybe?
skin
Yeah, I
that comes
know.
down.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I was talking to my friends and they asked me, who do you think is more brutal between Punisher and Rorschach? And they all said Punisher. I said Rorschach. And then when I went to go watch the movie, I sent them the video of that scene. I was like, does this answer your question?
Has Punisher ever done this? Yeah.
They were all like,
I mean, to
"Oh
be
my
fair,
God."
he did look out the
Punisher's
window
done a
and
lot.
see the two dogs fighting over her foot.
Her leg. Yeah.
Yes, that's true.
like, it was rough.
There's also a scene with Dr. Manhattan where he like explodes a bunch of people in like a club or something, and you see like the skin and tissue hanging from the ceiling, and that
Yeah.
arm like swings.
Yeah.
That was kind of brutal too.
And then he
A
vaporizes
lot of
all those
brutal
people
moments.
at the TV studio.
I think that was unintentional. I think.
No, that was
and they don't-
unintentional.
Yeah.
They don't show it in the movie, but in the comic, I think it's explained he just teleported them somewhere else. He didn't
Oh, did he?
vaporize them.
Okay.
He just he moved them somewhere else.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that's in the comic. I could be wrong, but I have that memory that they like find themselves outside or something, and they're all like,
Okay.
"Wait, what? How'd we get out here?"
I gotcha.
Yeah,
But,
I
well,
think,
if that's
I
the
think
case,
in the
then
movie
maybe it
they
wasn't.
I think in the movie they actually say like Dr. Manhattan just like went crazy and like vaporized them.
Well, yeah, Hollis Mason does say that. He
Yeah.
says Dr. Manhattan just lost it on live TV.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I don't know. I never got the impression that he just murdered all those people. But maybe
I
he
assumed that those people were very, very dead.
did.
I did too,
Maybe
but
I'm
like I
wrong.
said, I thought if they were, it was like him. It wasn't intentional. It was like a reaction, or it was a event that happened because of him not being able to really he was pushed
Right.
to his limit, and it just kind of happened based on his ability.
They should have had a moment
Yeah.
with him where he went, oops.
It does make
Sorry
sense now
about
that they are teleported because they don't really make that big of a deal about it after it happens. I feel like
Right.
if he had killed all those people, like movie's over.
That's true.
Right.
Yeah.
That would
Yeah,
have been
that-
the moment that would have been like, oh, he's a bad guy.
Right.
But he didn't become a bad guy until the
end.
events happen in the
Mhm.
cities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that makes sense. The music. I did want to talk about the music.
Oh yes, the music.
I think Tyler Bates did the music for this movie.
He did do the score. Yep.
Yes, I really enjoyed the score, but I enjoyed Zack Snyder's song choices a little bit more
Yeah.
than the score, especially Times Are Changing in the beginning.
Yes.
That was a great opening. And the funny thing is when we get to the sex scene and they're playing Hallelujah.
Yeah. Hallelujah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had to
When
skip
the-
that.
You're watching it with your kids.
for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That cracked me up the first time I saw it though. When
Yeah.
Hallelujah starts playing, I was like, that did make me laugh.
Yeah.
Some of the music, so the score I think was great, although I will say, and I don't think it's necessarily like a negative point, but I couldn't hum any of the score for you. You know what I mean? Like it served the purpose of the movie, but it's not.
You
I
can't
can't
recall
remember any of it.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't think that's necessarily bad. I don't think every movie has to have a Star Wars theme, or something. It doesn't need to be, big like that. But I think we've kind of come to expect it almost for superhero movies, especially.
Mhm.
But I do like the score. I think it serves the movie really well. And I do love the song choices. Some of the song choices, I believe, are straight from the book. Like, I know for a fact, all along the Watchtower, that line, because at the beginning of certain chapters in the book, there'll be like a title. And one of the titles, right, it's at that same scene. It's like when they're going to Ozymandias' base, the title is Two Riders Were Approaching, which is a line from that song.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think a couple of the other songs were probably taken from the book. Not all of them necessarily, but I know that one was. Hallelujah.
This is
I
a
don't
good
think is in the
segue
book.
into something I wanted to bring up is the what is the name? They call him Artie, I guess.
Archie?
Archie. That's it.
The airship.
Yes, I just wanted to talk about how awesome that was adapted to the movie. It looks so good, and I loved the uses of it. We got to see a lot of Archie.
We did, yeah. I also think the costumes. I mean, Rorschach looks exactly like he did in the comic, but everybody else gets a little, and maybe it's the comedian to an extent, but everybody else kind of gets like an updated movie version of the costume.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually think the costumes, especially Night Owl, I think Night Owl actually looks better in the movie than he does.
I agree, because he in the comic book he has this long thing on the back that I don't really like.
Right.
They get rid of that
Yeah.
in the movie, and I think it works
Right.
way better.
They tried to make him look more Owl-esque in the comic. Like he's kind of got, the cape almost is kind of like a weird, like it's supposed to almost look like wings when the wings are down or something kind of. It looks, it's fine. It works well in the comic, but I think in the movie he just looks so much better. And then Ozymandias, like they have like the rubber suit. Ozymandias, I don't know if you guys noticed, has nipples on his costume.
I did. I noticed that. I noticed that.
That's awesome.
And I remember somebody poking fun at that, and Zack Snyder was like, well, of course he does. Like, I think, Zack Snyder was kind of saying, like, these are the, superhero, like he had a reason for it that kind of tied in with Batman and Robin, basically.
Right.
And I was like, that's genius, but I can't remember exactly what it was, but yeah, I loved that he,
it's kind of, it's a poke, it's taking itself lightly. Yeah.
Right.
Which Watchmen kind of does to begin with. It's a story about people, real people. The only real superhero we have in this movie is Dr. Manhattan.
Right.
And it's just a bunch of real people that put on costumes and try to fight crime.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because they explain that. The first Night Owl explains the origin of superheroes. And it's very, it makes a whole lot of sense. It's very practical and realistic. Like, the bank robbers and stuff, they started wearing costumes and masks to obviously to hide their identities. And they thought it was fun, so a bunch of the cops got together and started doing the same thing, and there you go, superheroes and supervillains.
Yeah.
Yep. It's really kind of a brilliant reason,
absolutely,
for the creation of superheroes.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous, but it makes sense.
We'll do it too.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll make fun of you guys while we're dragging you off to jail.
Exactly.
And you won't know who arrested you, so you can't come back after us. It really is, because it was also, during the time of the mafia, so the police were kind of at that time, I would imagine, more in danger being identified by people of mafia. So yeah, they definitely would have a reason to want to conceal their identity.
Absolutely.
It's so interesting that you say that, because you really need to watch the TV show, because the TV show goes kind of into that about the police on the TV show, like every member of the police, it's like almost required for them to like hide their identity, because the police are just like under attack by certain whatever. So it's really it's comical at times, because there's like whenever they have like a meeting with all the different police and stuff, like this one guy's wearing like a big like panda mask or something, and he's like to kind of like hide his identity.
That's awesome.
But it's you guys should watch the show. I think you both would really enjoy it.
Yeah. Last thing I'll mention about Archie.
Yeah.
Was it hadn't been driven for a while, flown for a while, and Lori is like, let's take it out. And he's like, yeah, let's do it. And I wrote down, what a night for them to decide to just take Archie out after all this time, because they go out and then there's a burning building with people in it that they get to save.
Yeah. Very fortuitous.
So very fortunate for those people.
You know,
and the fact that there was a water tower just on top of the building.
That was
Right.
awfully convenient. I noticed that. I was
It
like,
was.
oh, a big water tower on top of a building that's on fire. That needs to happen.
I was gonna make the joke that it was Lori that actually set the fire. She was like, "Let's take Archie out." He's like, "Eh." She's like, "No, really, we should take Archie out."
We should take
We have
our
about 10 more minutes.
Right. Like,
We've gotta
for real,
go.
Like, we need to do it right now.
And then they kind of christen Archie.
That they do. That they do.
Archie, of course, being named after Archimedes.
Archimedes.
Is the name I was trying to think of, which is the owl of Merlin.
Yeah, which I thought was really cool too.
Yeah.
I think the movie is really, really well done, and I think the book is, a work of art. And so, yeah, it's so, both the movie and the book more so, obviously, because they can be just so detailed, like the history, and each issue ends with something different, but like sometimes it'll be excerpts from Hollis Mason's book talking about the history of the superheroes. I think that's like some of the stuff in the opening credits, like Dollar Bill getting his cape stuck in the revolving door, I
Right.
think came from that part of the book, came from the Hollis Mason excerpts. And then there's like a couple of ones where it's like from a book that Dan wrote about owls and stuff. It's just so rich and detailed. It's so amazing.
Yeah.
I actually kind of want to read it again now.
And then, of course, yeah, I'm actually probably going to, maybe even tonight. Then we didn't talk about the Black Freighter. I know it's not in the theatrical version, so maybe we shouldn't talk about it.
No, we can talk about it. I didn't see it because I watched the director's cut. I didn't watch the ultimate cut. So you guys can chime in on that. So I don't, because I didn't, I have watched the ultimate cut, but it's been too long. I won't be able to remember enough.
I just remember when I was reading the graphic novel, when I first started, like when those first bits would come, I was like, okay, this is weird. And then I was like, what was that about? Then I came to the second time, and I remember thinking, okay, is this going to be ongoing? And then the third time, and I was like, you're interrupting the story. Stop.
Right.
But the fourth or fifth time that I did it, I was like really starting to get invested in the Black Freighter story. So I started getting really excited when the Black Freighter parts came up.
Right.
And then the conclusion, I won't go into it in case people haven't watched or read the graphic novel or seen the ultimate cut. But the conclusion of that story just blows my mind, and I love it.
Yeah,
what do you think, Stu?
I wasn't crazy about the Black Freighter stuff for the same reason
Really?
you began not being crazy about it. It felt disruptive. And when it would come and go, I would forget about it, and then it would like surprise me when it showed back up. I'm like, oh, okay. So I mean,
Right.
I didn't hate it. I could have done without it. But the thing is, like on the 4K only has the ultimate cut, so I can't watch the director's cut on 4K. So if I want to see it in the best quality, I have to push through the Black Freighter stuff.
Gotcha.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder if
that's
you
exactly-
hit next on the chapter, it might just skip to.
It does, but I don't really like doing that. I just rather just sit there and watch it. Yeah.
You
Right.
should, because the
Yeah.
Black Freighter's good.
That's why for a long time I mean I still have it on DVD, but I've never gotten rid of my Watchmen DVD because I liked the theatrical version when I saw it in the theater, and that was the only way to watch it. You didn't, the Blu-ray was only the director's cut, and now the 4K, like you said, is only the ultimate cut, and so the theatrical version really only exists on DVD or digital, which I do have it digitally as well. So at least I have it in HD in that format. But clearly, though, it seems like Zack Snyder wants you to watch the ultimate cut.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's what
Yeah.
he's put out on 4K, that's what he wants you to watch. The Blu-ray has that. WB or Warner Brothers did this for a while, and they stopped doing it. But the movies that came out around this time period have the what do they call it? It's not quite a commentary, but like the movie, you'll be watching the movie, and then the movie will kind of get pushed back, and Zack Snyder will actually like walk out, and so the movie's kind of playing behind him, and he'll talk about the scene and stuff. It's I forget what they call it. It's like director mode or something like that, and it makes the movie, because he'll pause the movie and like talk about the scene, and you'll see some behind the scenes stuff. So it makes the movie that much longer. But I kind of want to go back and watch that with that version of the commentary, basically.
Sounds interesting.
All right. Well, I think it's time to rate the film. Anybody want to go first, or you want me to go first?
You can go first.
Go for it.
All right, I'll go first. After talking about this with you guys, I am super tempted to give it 5 stars. I don't think I can quite give it 5 stars, just because I feel like, comparing it to other 5-star movies, I'm like, is it as good as that? I don't know. So I'm going to go 4.5 stars, just because I do think it is incredible, and I think it's, I really enjoyed the rewatch watching it today, and I kind of forgot how much I really enjoyed it.
I'm actually the same boat as you, because I was thinking, man, like I want to give it 5 stars, but 4.5. I think I'm gonna bite the bullet and just say
5 stars.
As much as I love this movie's so good.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think I'm gonna get. Well, I'm not gonna give it 5 stars. I'm gonna give it 5 out of 5 Archimedes.
I thought you were 5 out of 5 Rorschach paintings, or whatever you call those things.
Yeah,
Rorschach tests.
Rorschach tests.
We're all in the same boat. I was very conflicted. I was going back and forth between 4.5 and 5. I am gonna agree with Justin. I can't quite give it 5 because I love this movie, and objectively I think it's one of the greatest superhero movies ever made. That being said, I don't enjoy it quite as much as other superhero movies, just because it's so heavy on the subject matter, even more so than like BVS. Because it is so realistic, and the way that Zack Snyder tells this story is it really hits close to home. But it's a fantastic adaptation of an already fantastic story, and in some ways it's better than the source material. Not every way, but in some ways. But yeah, I'm gonna have to
in some
go
ways.
ahead.
Yeah, in some ways I agree. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to go ahead and give it 4.5 smiley faces.
That's a good one too. 4.5 comedian buttons.
Yes.
That's awesome. Well, we'd love to know what you think about Watchmen. You can always leave a comment on cinemaheroes.com. You can also reach out to us on Instagram and Twitter. Both handles are cinemaheroes. Facebook.com/SM and SM podcast. Or if you're watching this on YouTube, leave us a comment in the comments, and give this video a thumbs up, and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'd love to hear from you however you want to reach out to us. Subscribe to Stew's channel as well, SmoothJStew. You can also find him on Instagram under the same name. But I think that about wraps it up for this episode. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm John Pelzel.
And I'm Jay Stew.
As always, thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing.